statements by each candidate for 3 minutes. The order was determined by choosing the paper. So Kevin will go first. Then we'll have 5 questions. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer that question, and then the other candidate will have 1 minute to rebut. So 5 questions that they are familiar with, and then we also will let you submit some questions, and time permitting, we'll answer at least 3 of those. They'll each get to answer, and then have a minute to rebut, and then closing statements. So Tony has some paper. If you want to ask a question, then you can write it down and we'll ask. So I think with that, you are up. And do we have a timekeeper? Okay. So how are you going to let them, what are you going to do? Hold up for 1 minute and 30 seconds. And 30. So, you will have 3 minutes to make an opening statement.
Good evening. Let me first say, with the Rocket playing game 2, I was afraid it might just be Dan and I here. So thank you for taking the time to come out tonight. We really appreciate it. I want to begin by telling you a little bit about me. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas. I was raised by my grandparents. The day after I was born, my dad left for boot camp in Fort Bliss, and my grandparents took me home and they raised me. My grandmother, I still have vivid memories, worked on the graveyard shift at Levi Strauss, and I can still remember her coming in the morning as I awoke, because my granddad was leaving to go to his job as a food broker. We didn't have a lot. I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment, but what I had are things that money can't buy. I was led to my faith by my grandmother. They taught me the importance of hard work, the importance of the value of integrity and commitment. And they said that you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. Dream the American dream, and you can do it. That's why I grew up. And I believe that. I began working when I was 14 years old. I used to say delivering drugs, but you can't say that now. I delivered prescriptions for a gentleman that's still a mentor of mine today. I was blessed in that I was able to save and put my way through Texas Tech University, where I became the first in our family to graduate from college. Some Red Raiders, there we go, with a degree in business. And I always appreciated that, but it wasn't until this past weekend that it really hit me. As my dad, we flew him down to attend the graduation of my youngest son from Houston Baptist University. And on Mother's Day, my dad, with his U.S. Army veteran cap, me, my oldest son Josh, who's here tonight, who graduated from the University of Houston and just finished his first year at University of Houston Law School, and my youngest, Will Roberts, who graduated. And I looked and I said, you know what? We have broken the trend. We've broken the trend, and we started a new trend that will continue in our family as the norm. I've been blessed being married to Holly for 29 years until we have 2 sons. And I've spent over 30 years in business. And in small business, I can give more details as we go on, since my business career has been sort of twisted a tad. But I love small business. I love taking business and growing it nationwide. Holly and I have lived in the community for 17 years. We raised our boys here. We serve in the church here. We support the nonprofits. We're part of the fabric of the community, which is why I chose to run for the Texas House and was fortunate to be elected. This past session, I'm happy with my proven conservative record in passing 5 bills. Thank you for being here tonight.
Our first question. There have been many dire predictions of the fate of Social Security if nothing is done to change the present formula. What are your plans to address the burgeoning retiree population with the reduced funding available?
first of all, I don't think it's a prediction. I think it is a reality. I was reminded of a reality today as I was speaking to a gentleman who was retired, who was living on Social Security, whose home was flooded in Bear Creek. And he asked a similar question. And the first thing I said to him was, you retired based upon knowledge of having a certain amount of Social Security. We, as elected officials, we as a government, we have a moral responsibility to honor that, first and foremost. Second of all, is we do have to make some changes because there is a dire deficit of Social Security. In 1940, for every 42 people working, one person received Social Security benefits. Currently, for every 5 people working, one person receives Social Security benefits. In the near future, it will be every 2 individuals working will receive Social Security benefits. You see the trend? The trend is we do not have enough working individuals paying into Social Security. So there's some things that we need to do, and we need to do quickly. First of all, we need to continue to advance the Texas model, which is less taxes, less regulation, and get folks out in the workforce. When we do that, I passed a bill this past session to eliminate one rule for every new rule passed into law, which Governor Abbott signed into law. I will take that bill and file it in Congress because when we create a business environment where businesses can grow, we create quality jobs. When we create quality jobs, we have more individuals paying into the tax base, i.e. paying into Social Security. That's the first thing we need to do. Second is, we're going to have to change the future. I dealt with this in the legislature as we were dealing with teacher retirement healthcare crisis, TRS care, and the major shortage. In addition to more paying in, we're going to have to adjust the future with those coming in, the workforce, and we're going to have to make some modifications. For example, one plan that I support, and it's the most conservative approach, is related to private retirement accounts, where each individual working would be able to maintain a percentage of their taxable income and contribute it into private retirement accounts. Here's the difference, that they own to be able to manage towards their future retirement. Right now, do you know you don't own Social Security? What you paid in is not a property right that you actually own, which is crazy to me. So we have to honor what we said we would do, and we have to begin making changes to additional enrollment and retirement accounts.
Is Crenhaw here? He's not here yet?
You'll know.
You're feeling it. You must be a Crenhaw fan.
And Dan Crenhaw has arrived, so you're going to
learn to be mission-oriented no matter what's coming at you from the flanks. And learn to be problem solvers. You know, early on, 2 deployments to Iraq, way to learn to work with different groups, different stakeholders with different interests, manage multi-million-dollar budgets, make life and death decisions with all the pressure in the world in the most dangerous environments imaginable. And make those decisions in coherent and responsible ways. After I got hurt, we moved on. We moved to strategic level. I had to work with the Department of State, U.S. embassies around the world, intelligence community, law enforcement agencies, foreign governments. Very different people with very different interests to get the job done. It was incredibly difficult. We had to be creative. We had to be hardworking. I think there's a little bit of that and a little bit of use of those kind of skill sets in Congress. After that, it wasn't for me. We needed the education and policy as well. And I got that from Harvard. Don't hold that against me. It's kind of like the Texas A&M of the East, I promise you. And then I would work on to work on Capitol Hill and work on important legislation like the National Defense Authorization Act. And that's what I'm doing here. It's here to serve. It's here to bring my experiences, both from the battlefield, from Congress, and beyond, to serve you. Thank you. And I think I have to answer a question now.
Okay. Next question. This will be for you, Kevin. You have 3 minutes to answer, and then Dan, you have 1 minute to rebut. I was told that we're going following directions because you didn't hear your answer. Anyway, life goes on. Do you think there should be term limits for elected members of Congress? If yes, why and what term limit would you suggest?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, not just campaign rhetoric, but I have, and you'll hear this a lot tonight, a proven record supporting that. In the Texas House last session, I voted for and we passed a bill, an Article 5 bill, and there was 2 features of the Article 5 bill. One was that the federal government should be required to balance the budget, and number 2 was that there should be term limits. So I am on record for proving that. In terms of the term, I think it should be 12 years. It should be 2 terms for senators, and it should be 6 terms for House members. Why? Because it gets back to the Founding Fathers' intent. The Founding Fathers' intent was never for politicians, for politics to be a profession. It was to be a citizen legislature. And the part of the problem that we see today, and part of the deep state is, well-intended individuals that get to DC and they become a part of the swamp. They stay there for decades, and it basically takes over from where their original intent was. We see that. We see it in the things that don't get accomplished. Why, you ask, the things don't get accomplished? It's because they work 3 days a week. I love that job. I don't know about y'all. They take months off in August. They should have the same requirements that the private sector has. So we need to return the legislature, Congress, back to the citizens. So I fully support and would support a term of 12 years.
From your talking to people. You feel like
If you have a minute to answer.
We agree on term limits. I signed a pledge for term limits as well. And I think we need to go further because what happens when we put term limits on congressmen, that actually empowers the deep state, that 4th branch of government. We need to find other ways to stop that as well. Right? Because it's those bureaucrats in the 4th branch, it's those GS, the civil servants, if they get their mission, you can't get rid of them. It doesn't matter which agency you're talking about. We have to be looking at ways to diminish that power as well. That is extremely important. It's not just term limits, we agree on that. It's also the deep state, that's the 4th branch of government. That's what we need to be tackling as well. Thank you.
So, now to put that down, this question's for you. Should our welfare policy include a requirement to work where possible in order to receive benefits?
Absolutely. It's not a common conservative philosophy, but a common sense philosophy. It's important that when we talk about the spirit of America, the spirit of America is finding purpose. If you cannot find purpose in your life, you lose your spirit, and our country loses its spirit. Transfer payments, welfare programs cause dependency. That slowly erodes one's spirit. Slowly erodes the spirit of our country. That's a very dangerous thing. In September 2016, I was medically retired from the Navy. They actually tell you as you're retiring that you're eligible for Social Security disability insurance. And I'm perfectly capable of applying for that. I've never done it, and I never will. Even though that's lots of money lost on my part. I don't do it because I don't want that state of dependency. I don't believe that that's the right thing to do. I don't believe I'm disabled. We've seen this work in states like Maine, where they put work requirements on welfare, and we saw unemployment go down. You know, and again, we see it in common sense. It is truly about the spirit of America. It's about finding a purpose in life. We have to support those kind of policies 100%. Not only is it viable, not only is it important for our purpose and our spirit as a country, but it's important for taxpayer dollars. Because it's important that if we're going to have welfare programs, that our taxpayer dollars are spent wisely. We work hard for that money. You deserve to keep it. If we're going to give it to the federal government, they better use it the right way. Thank you.
I'll take 4 minutes. Yeah, Dan only got one last time. 1 minute? Yeah. 1 minute's good, Carmen. Good to see you.
Does he not know he's got the minute to talk?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Come on.
I agree with President Trump and the executive order that he signed that we should have a work requirement for welfare. Welfare was never designed to be permanent. It was designed to be a safety net in time of need, not a hammock. My grandfather, when I took over, he worked till he was 77, came down with leukemia. When I took over his finances, the most he ever made was $26,000. He never asked for government assistance, nor did we receive it. We need to pair the 26 million individuals who are not disabled, that are unemployed, with the critical needs that we have in the workforce for skilled labor positions, for lightweight manufacturing positions. I even agree with what Kentucky is looking at doing, that's saying we have these open positions. If you want to be on welfare, part of that's going to be that you have to either get in school, in education, vocational school, or assume one of these positions. So, I support it.
What have you done since Hurricane Harvey, and what plans do you have for the rest of this year to support a solution to avoid future flooding?
I came involved with this issue of flood mitigation before Harvey even occurred. I was a co-author on the joint resolution during the legislative session to require the federal government to advance payment of $456 million to fund the coastal spine to protect the Texas coast from surge, which protects our Houston Ship Channel, which protects our city. I've been involved. I lived through, as you did, having lived here 17 years, the Memorial Day flood, the Tex Day flood, and Harvey. It was soon after appointed to the Disaster Recovery and Relief Subcommittee, and have been involved on the recovery and relief side since day one. Specific things, just as of this week. My office in Austin is drafting a letter to send to the San Jacinto River Authority Board and to TCEQ in support of Lake Conroe seasonally lowering its level. Second of all, I sent a letter to Governor Abbott, along with many other great legislators, Dan Huberty, Brandon Creighton, the local community, SJRA has been working, asking Governor Abbott to please temporarily waive the permitting and allow dredging to begin. I'm glad to see that advancing. I was meeting this week with a very similar, by the way, the Lake Houston Flood Coalition is the model of what grassroots should be. And a similar one has been created in Cyprus. And it reminded me of how dysfunctional the bureaucracy and confusing is. We need a regional flood control plan where the municipal government, the state, and the federal government are all working together in collaboration. Because I asked the gentleman with the Harris County Flood Control, so can you please bring these folks, as a room of folks, up to speed on what initiatives have been moved forward in order to push forward flood mitigation for Cypress Creek? He began to say, well, our role, Harris County Flood, is to handle debris removal and dredging, and we did that after every event. And the next question was, well, what about the erosion needing dredging? Well, that's a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers issue. It is totally dysfunctional. I will continue to advocate, as I am now, to assure that we don't have a repeat event. Second of all, in Congress, it will be my responsibility to assure that we have the funding that we need, that it gets to where it needs to be. We don't need the state as an intermediary. Let's get it to the counties and the cities to begin moving forward on these initiatives, because you don't deserve to have a repeat, and you shouldn't have a repeat of Harvey if everyone is working together doing their job. Thank you.
Okay. The question is flooding and what we've done so far, what we plan to do. I got my hands dirty. I got my hands dirty early on. Working with Team Rubicon, bucking out houses, pulling out nails, pulling out drywall, literally taking our boots off and pouring water out, which was actually sweat. It was early September. We've still been volunteering, my wife and I, during the campaign. We've been raising money for volunteer groups out there, thousands of dollars I could have been raising for the campaign. Instead, we gave it to volunteer groups so they could rebuild neighbors' homes. That's what we've been doing. That's what we continue to be doing. We're working with Mattress Matt on using his amazing marketing skills and advertising skills, trying to get more funding for volunteer groups that are doing their best out there. It's incredible work. What we need to do in this Lake Houston area, I would say there's a new plea for 3. It's the more detention basins up north, San Jacinto Riverbed, San Jacinto dredging, and Tanner Gates in Lake Houston. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take 3 questions from the audience, although they're still coming in. So we're going to start with this one. So we're going to let you go back and forth, and you get 3 minutes to answer or 1 minute to add or expound on that. So you're going to have the first question, Kevin. Will you be committed to drain the swamp, removing all obstructionists, including Republican congressmen who do not support the Trump agenda?
Yes, absolutely. Supported President Trump from the beginning of his primary, and here's why. As a businessman, I knew and know that in order to get something done, we needed a business person mentality in office. Someone who has actually dealt with budget situations and had to develop and balance and work within a budget. Someone who has had to deal with economic downturns. Someone who has had to deal with crazy employment law issues that has had to deal in the private sector with issues that affect folks day in and day out. And guess what? I think it has proven to work. First time in 3 decades we have had a tax cut. And that was driven by President Trump. It was driven in a way that benefited everyone. It benefited individuals, it benefited business. We've seen the benefit and the outcome of it through one, business expansion. We've seen increased jobs. We've seen increased wages and bonuses. In fact, we're seeing less individuals on SSDI, food stamps, and Medicaid than we have in decades. Because folks are going back to work. Second of all, business approach brings to foreign policy.
He didn't hear the
What he says he's going to do, he does. And today, it has worked. Now, what does he need? He needs some more proven conservatives with business experience that can come in and take complex issues and move them forward. One thing that it has to do, because it is the barrier, is what Ted Cruz says needs to be done 5 years ago. And that is the first day when you serve in the legislature, the first day of a session, you pass the rules, the House and the Senate rules of how the legislative process will be enacted for that Congress. Have to get rid of the 60-vote rule. The 60-vote rule is what is preventing critical legislation from getting to the floor and being passed out of the Senate. It has been over a decade since we had a budget. As a business, can you imagine trying to do business without a budget? We're getting appropriation bills to the floor in the House and they're getting passed out. President Trump needs more like-minded conservative individuals with business experience and a proven conservative record who understand the legislative process to help him to move his agenda forward, and I would love an opportunity to do that in Congress.
1 minute to expand on that, and then you'll get a question.
We agree. We absolutely need to push the president's agenda forward. It's a solid agenda. And I'll expand on a couple of things. Taking Congress, so President Trump has done a great job with anti-regulation policy, deregulating the economy the best he can. Congress needs to take back its role on this. Congress has gotten into the habit of passing vague statutes that could then be interpreted by the fourth branch of government however they like. They can create rules. Rules mean laws. Rules mean laws on you that cannot be overturned. The way to overturn that is if Congress gets back to doing its job on deregulating the economy, costing our economy about $2 trillion a year by some estimates. That's unacceptable. It's unnecessary. That goes counter to the ideals of liberty that we as conservatives live under. It's got to be stopped. And we've got to start doing our job in Congress. Thank you.
Okay, so you get a question, you get 3 minutes, and then you'll get a minute to expand on it. What are the most pressing issues that need to be addressed?
The most pressing issue, what I prioritize constantly, and a lot of you have heard me over and over and over again, that we need to prioritize the existential threats to Texas. Texas is on the front lines in 2 ways. Border security and flooding. Existential threats to this area. That's why I prioritize that. Border security is an enormous problem. We're constantly being bullied into this idea by the left that it's at an all-time low. The crossings are at an all-time low. There's nothing to see here, no problem at all. That's not true. The Department of Public Safety actually measures this in the state of Texas, and we have over 50,000 apprehensions, not just crossings, this is just the ones we know about, apprehensions since October. We've had well over 200 border agents assaulted. Why are they being assaulted? Because there's not enough of them. Because when one guy goes out, he's an easy target. And Texas has been fronting the bill. We've added DPS agents to the border. We've paid for National Guardsmen to do counter-drug operations at the border. And this has real effects, good effects. Texas is doing its job for the rest of the country. We do our job leading conservatives. We do our job serving in the military. We're doing our job protecting the international border. But frankly, I think we're sick of it. We're sick of footing the bill. Border security is a must. We have to give the president the resources that he demands in order to secure the border. We need to put a wall where we can. We need to put extra surveillance where we can. Again, Texas has been footing the bill. We've been putting 4,000 cameras down there. That's our taxpayer money from this state. Demand that the federal government not only repay Texas, but also give us the resources to secure the border once and for all. We also need to reform the immigration system. And things like chain migration. No other country does this. Must reduce the incentives to come across. Those are physical incentives. If there's a big wall in front of you, you're probably not going to try. We also have to reduce the economic incentives. We should have mandatory E-Verify, but make it possible for businesses to comply. That's going to be a carefully designed E-Verify program. We have to get rid of things like birthright citizenship to give someone the incentive to be 8 months pregnant and jump across the border, and then we have 2 months on top of that. Those are just a few of the major issues. We are not anti-immigrant, we're anti-illegal immigration. We understand the need for labor in this country, we understand the need for good, legal immigration. My stepmother's sitting right here, perfect example of people who do it the right way. I bet everyone in here knows someone who does it the right way. We believe in this country, we believe in the ideals that we're founded on, and we believe in bringing the right people here. Thank you.
Two things related to immigration. First, border security. If we can't secure our borders, we can't protect our nation. And Dan's right. The federal government has not done their job as it relates to border security. You know how I know? Because I voted and advocated for an additional $800 million last session to be given to additional personnel and technology to secure our borders. Second of all, sanctuary cities. I co-sponsored and voted for a sanctuary cities bill that we got passed into law to protect our families. Guess what, California? If you want to be the state of sanctuary cities, you think our state deficit is a problem now? We don't need to send them federal funding if they're going to just say the rule of law does not matter.
Okay, so we have one more question, which you will get 3 minutes to answer, and then Dan will answer 1 minute, and then you each will get 3 minutes to have a summary. Yes. Would you explain your position on gun control?
Good question.
Gun control.
I'm an ardent supporter of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment should not be infringed upon. As a matter of fact, I'm proud to say that in this race that I've been endorsed by the NRA. I have an A+ voting record from my time in the Texas legislature. As I tell folks, the issue is it's brought up because, as you know, these horrible events, the left takes them and they immediately take them to begin advocating for gun control. The gun didn't kill the person with ill intent killed. Bad people will continue to get guns. The issue is really this. It's an issue of safety and security. I chair the school board, and we had a very similar incident. We had 2 individuals who had burglarized an apartment across the street who came over into the school, and they hid out. Fortunately, law enforcement apprehended them before anything horrible could be done. The next day, we locked the campus down to only 1 point of entry, We already had video cameras, and we put an armed security guard at that point of entry as people enter. I had one gentleman, a parent, call me and said, you know, you're just scaring the kids by having an armed security guard at the door. I said, sir, I respect that, but do you realize what someone sitting at the door without a gun is? They're a parking lot attendant. And my responsibility is to protect your children. So absolutely, as every other constitutional right shall not be infringed upon, we must stand in the gap and we must uphold the Second Amendment, but we must deal with the problem of safety and security, where we can send our kids to school, where we can enter churches without being fearful for our lives. Another thing that I backed was passed by Senator Cornyn, and that is an extensive background where the data that is already exists gets in a timely fashion and gets loaded in the database. So when individuals go to purchase a weapon, that information is there. For example, some of the events, the event in where a fellow went in that had served and just assassinated a number of people. He had a record of domestic violence. He had a record of aggression in his records, military records, that had never been transferred into a database. That it should have been there, and had it been, there would have been a high probability that he would have never gotten those weapons. So I support the Second Amendment.
Thank you.
But it's about making the right arguments for that too. We have a lot of false narratives coming out of the left on gun control, on what the Second Amendment really is, what it means. They'll make up ideas like, no, what the founders meant was it has to be within a militia. You put your guns in a safe at the local militia headquarters, and then you all get together and shoot. That's never what the founders intended. That's not what historical documents show. What they intended was the right for armed citizenry. And they intended an armed citizenry to be armed so to prevent a tyrannical government from taking us over. To allow us the right to self-defense. I'm out of time. So with that, period. Second Amendment, we're going to support it. Absolutely.
Tonight,
2 minutes. We can only tolerate 2 minutes of you. Only 2 minutes, please.
Are you glad you're not?
2, please. 2.
thank you folks for coming out tonight. It is critical that those who get to voting booth are educated, that have had an opportunity to look at both candidates. And that's the beauty of the democracy we live in. You get to do that, and then you get to pick the candidate you feel will best represent your voice and represent the district. I just wish more individuals would get to the voting booths.
Yes.
Our turnout in primaries, when you look in comparison to the total number of registered voters, is dismal. So thank you. Second of all, I want to go on record again, as I try to do every time, and be very, very clear about this. I highly respect Dan Crenhaw. I respected him in the primary, respect him as much in the runoff. I thank him for his sacrifice, and I thank him for his service. And I would do nothing to ever degrade him, because I do appreciate that. But there are some important differences in terms of policy perspective. And I think it's important to have that dialogue in that regard. So, why would I ask for your vote? First is, my wife and I have lived in this community for 17 years. We've raised kids in this community. We understand the needs and have been active in this community. I believe Congressman Poe, Judge Poe as I call him, set the model of what servant leadership should be. It should be someone who's come from the community, who wants to be the voice for the community and will vote for people over politics. And I can be talked about a lot of things, but one thing that I don't think anybody would tell you is that I did not advocate on behalf of my constituents, i.e. the fireworks bill. Second of all, 30 years of business experience. It is important. It's important to take that experience, because when you look at legislation, if you have never dealt with it and seen the repercussions of decisions you make, that's how we get unintended consequences.
That's 3 minutes.
Public policy is complex. It is complex. And experience, the great part about experience is you have experience and it doesn't matter. Finally, I have a proven conservative record. You can go look at it. There is no one of the things that might have been said about me that has been able to substantively bring forth a bill that I either passed into law or voted for as not being fiscally or socially conservative.
Public service is important. Experience is important. When I first got into public service, well over 10 years ago, I took an oath. It's to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. And that's what I did. Mostly foreign enemies. Pretty much exclusively foreign enemies, let's be honest. Nothing about that oath has changed, though. And it's time to expand it. It's time to talk about the domestic enemies that we have. Over taxation, over regulation, threats to our border, threats to our immigration system, threats to our faith, our family values. Trying to recreate, redefine everything we stand for. It's completely unacceptable. And we need warriors to defend us against it. We need warriors who have worked on Capitol Hill like I have, who do understand behind the scenes what needs to happen. Who can hit the ground running to support our president in trying times when issues like North Korea are happening right now. And the Iran nuclear deal is now is finally being thrown out the window like it is right now. I have worked behind the scenes on these issues. I have literally written the doctrine on these issues because my deployments were working in the Arabian Gulf, counter-Iranian operations. My last deployment was working on the Korean Peninsula, countering the North Koreans. I have written the behind-the-scenes information on these things. That's why I'm running for this seat. Because experience does matter, and I have the recent and relevant experience to protect this country. And our president needs that. Our president is doing amazing things in our foreign policy. He's doing amazing things on the domestic front. He needs our help. He needs real fighters. He needs people who can inspire the next generation to follow conservative values again. If there is one legacy that I want to have, it is that I gave the party a future, where we brought more people in. Talked about existential threats to Texas and border security and flooding, but there are existential threats to our entire country, and that is the diminishment of our party. The Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan, the party that protects the American identity, the party that protects liberty and freedom. That's what we're trying to protect, and that's the oath I took, is to defend you from those threats, and that's what I plan to do. Thank you.